Hey yo, what's up everybody? Now that we're gearing up towards Wuthering Waves patch 2.0, I thought it'd be a nice idea to recap what actually happened and what we know from the story from all the 1.x patches. You might find some things you didn't notice your first time around. I know I did, reviewing everything. By the way, I'll try as much as possible to go in chronological order, but there will be times where it just makes sense to go in the order that they present things in the story. And just so you know, I won't be including everything, but I will be including the most important points and story beats. Also, this is by far my longest video, and it took me quite a long time to make, so if you really rock with this type of content, please let me know by liking and sharing this video. Without further ado, let's get it. Let's start at the beginning. Third planet from the sun. The world of Solaris III has been the subject of strange catastrophes known as the Lament for over 10,000 years. It is destroying the world as humanity knows it. The first great lament changed everything in terms of the physics of the world, everything except gravity. It's the only natural law that remained intact, but one of the major changes the lament made to the world was it caused everything in the world to be converted to vibrating frequencies or reverberations. When people resonate with the frequencies of other things and can manipulate them, they are called resonators. A key characteristic of resonators is their tacit mark. It denotes their resonator status. Of course, we play as the rover. So who is the rover? How do they fit into all of this? Well, there's a lot we don't know, but we do know more than you might think. It's not clear how old the rover is, but we do know the rover has been battling the lament for a long time, basically since it started. So like for millennia. The lament causes all kinds of crazy phenomena in Solaris 3. Phenomena like tacit fields, where monsters known as tacit discords come out of, or strange spike-like ore called tacitite, and a whole lot more. Well, one day while on an island entirely made of tacitite, Rover discovers an ancient machine that can predict lament outbreaks. The machine is the Tethys system. Figuring that such a device could greatly aid in the fight against the lament, Rover founded an organization for battling the lament on that very island. That place would become known as the Black Shores. Teleport points we use serve as beacons that relay information to Tethys to monitor the lament all across the globe. In these days, the rover was also known as the Astral Modulator. He was one who oversaw the data collected by Tethys and saw to Tethys' proper functioning. Speaking of which, the Tethys system's core was malfunctioning. What is Tethys' core? Well, Tethys being a machine incapable of emotion, the Tethys core requires strong emotions to function. Just like the lament. The lament feeds on human emotion. So they thought it was a win-win to use the lament for the purpose of being Tethys' core. So go ahead and drop that thing inside of Tethys. A lament inside of Tethys would theoretically allow them to study it and feed Tethys the energy it requires to function. However, eventually it proved to be unstable. Who would have thought, right? Basically, what was happening was the lament inside of Tethys would reanimate the copies of people who died during the lament outbreak, replaying that day over and over and over again without end. Anyways, they needed a new core for Tethys, so the Shorekeeper was created for the purpose of stabilizing the Tethys core. She was to be a being born of pure light energy. And oh yeah, the important part, she was able to experience emotion. So go ahead and drop that thing inside of Tethys. But it's not that simple. With that emotion came sentience. Rover and the Shorekeeper became quite fond of each other. He taught her to play the piano, had deep conversations with her, took her to different nations like Renacita, and created vibrant memories. I mean, they spent a long time together. They've known each other for essentially millennia at this point. He even went on to create Jue and found Jingzhou during this stretch of time. So when it came down to dropping her inside the Tethys core, he couldn't do it. That would mean losing all of that. Forever. So rather than let that happen, the rover left the Black Shores to find another way. That was 20 years ago. Somewhere between then and now, the rover lost all of their memories. At the start of the game, we can see the rover and a mysterious goddess before him. Before activating his tacit mark, she appears to reach inside of his chest and place something there. Could this be Abby? We don't know. While this scene is at the start of the game, it isn't clear when it actually happens. As we know, the rover was a resonator, capturing reverberations of tacit discords way before the start of the game.
This frequency has dwelled within you for millions of years.
In fact, this isn't even his first time being reawakened. So why would they just be receiving a tacit mark here? Does this happen every time they're reawakened? There are a few theories about this, but I won't get too deep into theories in this video, so I'll just state the facts for now. So the goddess plunges rover into a portal landing us into the etheric sea. The etheric sea typically emerges when a tacit field is about to form, and we will soon discover a newly formed tacit field on the ground not far from where we woke up. Many people stand to benefit from taking advantage of a powerful figure with no memory of its past. Information about who you are and your arrival was known and anticipated by a select few. Among the known factions aware of the rover's condition are the Fractsidus, Black Shores, Sentinel Jue, Changli, and Jin Shi, the magistrate of Jingzhou. A party of 3 was organized to retrieve you after you appear in Jingzhou. That party consists of Jingzhou Junior Patroller Qixia Yang Yang of the Midnight Rangers Outrider Division, and Bai Ji, a healer and researcher of the Huashu Academy. It's likely you were first discovered by Bai Ji, who later goes off on her own to investigate the newly formed tacit field. You awaken in the Gorge of Spirits to find Yang Yang and Qixia there to greet you. Yang Yang remarks that it looks like drowning, in reference to your condition. They all decide to team up together and head to their meeting spot to catch up with Bai Ji. Along the way, you come to an area with a huge, giant dragon statue. And of course, we know that dragon is Jue. The rover has a flashback seeing himself face to face with Jue, which is quite fitting because it was here, a century prior, that the rover, harnessing the power of Jue, defeated the Crownless and established Jingzhou. After the flashback, Yang Yang tells us more about Jue and about the Sentinels in general. It's from her that we learn that there are 6 cities and 1 capital of Huanglong. The Sentinels are present wherever civilization thrives, and each major city has its own Sentinel to watch over and protect the people. We also learn that originally all the Sentinels of Huanglong were once one entity, but for some unknown reason they split into 6 and became responsible for their own respective areas of Huanglong. Yang Yang tells us that only a Sentinel's appointed resonator is allowed within its proximity, which brings into question who or what will be the resonator of Raguna's Sentinel in Renacita. Anyways, we finally arrive at the meeting spot. We discover Bai Ji isn't there. She is instead investigating a tacit field nearby. And what spawns from this tacit field? The Crownless. He's back with a vengeance. Or not, we kind of beat him with a lot less effort than was seemingly required a century ago. After defeating the Crownless, its reverberation, aka its echo, is left behind. Our friends ask us to use our terminal to collect it. But my man's terminal is at level 0, y'all. Suddenly, we hear Abby's voice saying it's hungry, and it collects the echo for us. After collecting it, we have another quick flashback of the Dreamless. Because newsflash guys, battling the Thermodian is something we've already done too. Our new buddies are pretty surprised to see us just scoop up that echo without a terminal. Well, I mean, Bai Ji is chill as usual, but Qixia is wilding out, and Yang Yang drops a massive lore bomb. This was like what? The first 10 minutes of gameplay? And she references this book called The Comprehensive Mirror for Historians. She mentions that the person described in the book, the rover, is essentially a celestial being who commanded the power of the universe. This being took up mortal form and created Pangu, basically the ability to capture echoes. Everybody else needs a Pangu terminal, and this man just scoops them up with his bare hands, or Abby's hands. You know what I'm talking about. Qixia goes on to say that this person used the first echo to rebuild the world, sort out the laws, and establish Huanglong. Right after this, the etheric sea dissipates, and our friends receive a message from Magistrate Jin Shi. She says that she's been waiting for us, which isn't much of a surprise given what we now know. Sentinel Jue had prophesied your return, and Jin Shi had been sharing information about you with Black Shores. Together with Changli, she devised a method of operation It's unclear on how much information was shared between the various parties though, because, Black Shores was kind of moving like they were on the other side of the fence, you know what I mean? They had villain energy. We head out to meet Jinshi, and Camilla is in the tree just staring at us, muttering to herself, sounding all devious as she does. When we finally make it to City Hall, Jinshi isn't there. Instead, we meet with her bodyguard, Sanhua, who sees the world differently than other people. Basically, she's blind, but she can see the world in frequencies. What's notable is that the rover is one of the few people she actually sees as they are. From her backstory, we learn that she usually sees everyone as twisted monsters, which goes back to one of my theories, but again, a video for another day. Sanhua gives us 3 objects Jinshi left as clues. They serve as a way for her to meet us without prying eyes and ears of ill-intentioned people, getting information they aren't supposed to know, such as the current state of Jue. To see if we can gain some insight on these objects, we head to the Huashu Academy. Coincidentally, we also agreed earlier to have our resonator status evaluated by the Academy. While doing so, Baiji speculates that there must be some kind of dimension or creature existing in our body, a creature capable of absorbing frequencies. We now know this creature to be Abby. During this examination, Baiji has us do a combat simulation in a Sonarosphere. The Sonaro causes visions of a giant moon and the Dreamless. After leaving the simulation, we tell Baiji what we saw, and she says that it reminds her of an ancient war, adding further credence to the notion that the rover has experienced combat against these beings before. Baiji, Mortefi, and Yang Yang go on to provide more information about the clues helping to solve the riddle of Jinshi's 3 objects. After leaving the Huashu Academy, it's revealed that we're being watched by yet another faction, the Fractsidus. Rover and his friends decide on a course of action to get more info to solve Jinshi's puzzle. On the way, they meet John Shin. The guards are giving her a hard time, but we vouch for her, and it's all good. When one of the guards examines our access pass, he finds out that we have the highest level of access clearance, and the other guard says that with this level of access, we can lead an entire army out of the city, and no one would question it. Just one of the perks of establishing the country, I guess. Anyway, we leave with John Shin and head to a military base to find the person she's looking for. We fulfill a few side missions along the way to give more insight about the intense struggle of the soldiers and life outside of the city. While speaking with Yang Yang, you suddenly hear Abby's voice again, saying, "Food." Rover's consciousness is transported through the eyes of a tacit Discord. He's able to see battle currently taking place in Norfall Barrens, which is really interesting because we don't really ever see this happen again as far as I can recall. The rover recalls what Baiji told him about one of the 3 objects. He deduces that the object's frequency matches with the coordinates of Chi-Chi Village. When we get to Chi-Chi Village, we find a strange tacit Discord. It doesn't attack us, it instead repeats the cries of distressed humans who once inhabited the village. Yang Yang draws the conclusion that the village was destroyed not too long ago, and that someone might have intentionally concealed the village to hide what happened. We can sense that someone connected with what happened is still nearby. After looking around, they notice cards on the ground, scars cards. And Yang Yang deduces that the Fractsidus must be behind this. If you don't know who the Fractsidus is after this video, check out this one. Basically, the Midnight Rangers and Jinshi view them as a terrorist organization. In short, they believe everyone should have resonance abilities. But beyond that, no one really seems to know their true goal. Yang Yang describes one Fractsidus member by saying, "There's a man who sees no order and revels in destruction, and that she's seen those cards before." Suddenly, boom. A huge red portal appears behind Yang Yang, sucking her in. It's Scar. Man knows how to make an entrance, that's for sure. Anyway, he explains that Yang Yang is safe and that he just wanted to remove her so she wouldn't sway our judgment. He reveals that he's heard that we lost our memory and has been following us since we first woke up. And he goes on to say that there are a number of other people who've been following us, but out of all of them, he's the only one who came forward to meet us face to face with absolute honesty. He tells us that forces have been fighting for possession over us from the moment we woke up, and every person we've met knows how valuable we are. Which, if you think about it, it does kind of recontextualize all the times people kept comparing you to an ancient celestial being, seemingly on a whim. Anyway, Scar tells us the Fractsidus didn't destroy the village. Scar knows that we won't be easily swayed by just explaining things himself and encourages us to look around to find clues to let us know what really happened. After looking at some clues, we guess that the villagers killed each other. And he says that we're right, but the truth is far more complicated. He tells a story involving a metaphor involving sheep and an evil shepherd. The rover asks Scar, is that why he became the shepherd? And he responds that he was never the shepherd and never will be. He says that he and the rover are the Black Lamb. The situation escalates to a point where Scar generates his Elysium realm, where we face him in combat. But mid-fight, Yang Yang wakes us up in the real world and tells us she shattered Scar's illusion. Then Frolog emerges and tells Scar that he took his meeting a bit too far. After Scar and Frolog leave, a single tacit Discord is left frantically yelling, "Brother, brother." Yang Yang and Rover suspect that he's referring to Scar. Rover explains what Scar told him, and Yang Yang says despite how twisted he is, we can't take his words for granted, so we go and look for more information. Then it's revealed that Sanhua had been watching them the entire time. And over the phone, she mentions to Jinshi that just as she anticipated, Scar did not try to kill or harm Rover and Yang Yang, and confirms that she stayed out of it as asked. Rover and Yang Yang search for more information, and this takes them to an underground cavern. It's there that they find an old tattered diary, and this diary details the truth of the village. Scar had indeed visited the village before. He told the girl writing the diary that she could call him brother, and he told her the same story of the shepherd and the sheep, just like he told us. He said, "We are the black sheep," referring to himself and the girl. It isn't exactly clear what other involvement Scar had with the village, but what he told us was essentially true. The girl had the ability to resonate with the frequencies of tacit discords and humans, granting her the ability to reanimate the dead into tacit discords. Her sister died trying to protect her, and she transformed her into a TD. The girl felt super guilty and wanted to find a way to fully return her to human form, but questions if it's really possible. The other villagers find out about what happened, and they are furious. They surround the house, calling her and her father murderers. The girl prays for salvation for Chi Chi village, and the last line of text in her diary is written in another handwriting, and it reads, "It seems you are the luckier one." Yang Yang believes the tacit discord we saw earlier stayed to convey the last wishes of the girl. Later in the city, we discuss in further detail with Chisha. We learn that the records say the whole event happened a long time ago, and that the vast majority of people in the village were relocated. Chisha, Yang Yang, and Rover start to speculate that Scar might have taken the girl away to safety, or maybe to join the Fractsidus. Alright y'all, I just want to interrupt the recap to say this. While this is one of the more fun and interesting parts of the story, especially the first time around, I gotta say it, the storytelling here really isn't that good, and it's hard to actually tell what's happening. Yang Yang says it looks like this event happened recently, but Chisha says it happened a long time ago. Scar says everyone killed each other. The diary hints that but leaves the ending open. However, Chisha says most of the people in the village were just relocated. Scar tells us that the girl was sacrificed. Yang Yang speculates the tacit discord is her, only to later state that it's just conveying her last wish. And at the end, Chisha, Yang Yang, and Rover question if Scar saved the girl and took her away from the village. However, the diary implies she might have died. There are all kinds of anomalies between Scar, Yang Yang, the diary, and Chisha, and they even go back and forth as to what things mean as the story progresses. So just know if you're confused here, it's not just you. It was written that way. Moving on. We solve Jinshi's puzzle, and it leads us to the Grand Library. Access to various Grand Libraries across Guanglong are almost never open to the public, and are usually only accessible by the Sentinels and their respective magistrates. These libraries are huge databases and carry all sorts of information that date back to ancient days. Before setting off to the Grand Library, it's explained that Rover met with Jinshi in secret after solving the last of her 3 riddles. During this meeting, It's revealed that she was searching for Sentinel Jue. She knows the Fractsidus is behind his disappearance. She goes on to tell us what she believes to be the Fractsidus objectives, which are to cause another lament, persuade us to join their side, capture Jue, and resurrect the Threnodian. She said when Jue last spoke to her, it mentioned about the Threnodian being in Norfall Barrens. Because she knows Scar is trailing us, she sets a trap at the Grand Library. So, as planned, Rover heads to the Grand Library to fulfill Jinshi's request. After making it there, we find that part of the library is submerged in water. In order to set everything right and reach the database, we solve a series of puzzles and reach the core of the database. Scar reveals himself and threatens us. He wants to blow the whole place up, but Rover is unsurprised and unfazed by Scar's presence because of the plan. Scar discovers it was all a trap the entire time and decides to peace out. But before he can teleport out, Rover jumps in his domain expansion to do battle. This time, Scar transforms into a giant beast, but he is defeated. Afterwards, he questions how it all happened. How were we so prepared? And the secret meeting plot is revealed. Scar is then handcuffed and about to be sent to jail. But before he is, he says that once we know what we really are, we'll come to the Fractsidus with no hesitation. And then he tosses us his card. After Scar is arrested, Jinshi tells us about the Black Shores. She says one member contacted her for more information from the moment of our awakening, and that it's thanks to them that our meeting went smoothly. Jinshi lets us know that the Fractsidus is still following us, and that we should consider connecting with the Black Shores because they might be our allies in the future. After telling Yang Yang and Chisha about our experience speaking with Jinshi, we decide to seek out more information about the Black Shores. Of course, all the Black Shores members wear the Blake Bloom flower. So, in order to grab the attention of the Black Shores, we decide to get a Blake Bloom to lure them out. This brings about our introduction to Verena. She analyzes the image of the Blake Bloom given to us by Jinshi, and she makes an artificial version using her resonance abilities. When Rover begins to walk away, he senses someone is following him. At first, it seemed to be the Fractsidus, but it turns out the Fractsidus wasn't the only faction following him this time. It's here that we are formally introduced to Camellia. She lunges a flurry of attacks at us, and that results in Rover pinning her down. She introduces herself as a Black Shores Bloom Bearer, a person who seeks out new recruits, tests their abilities, and trains them. Tethys has instructed her to seek us out. While Camellia is a part of the Black Shores, she isn't really dedicated to her mission as she is to testing her combat prowess. She says that she'll be watching us, and then she escapes. We return to the city and we find Alto and Encore have also been following us. Chisha spots Alto being sus and interrogates him. Encore actually makes him sound more sus, so eventually he Batmans out of there with his smoke bomb forte. We track him down and he basically lets us know that he's way more knowledgeable than he appears. He explains that he wanted to get us alone. He knows we worked with the plant-type resonator to make the Blake Bloom we have, and that they have people that can do that too. He tells us that he has information about our past, but as an information broker, it will come at a cost. Basically, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. He invites us to come with him and Encore to aid in his mission as compensation. His mission is to investigate an abandoned Court of Savante facility, because something is wrong with their lament detection system in the area, and Alto suspects that the resonance beacon has been damaged. After getting inside the facility, we learn quite a few things. We learn that the Court of Savante's research facility was sponsored by a Fractsidus overseer, most likely Scar. The court's goal was to recreate the unknown god we see at the start of the game. A holographic image of her displays, and Rover says he thinks he knows her. Alto quips, knew it. The facility's researchers were just a small faction, not representative of the whole of the Court of Savante. They were studying an ancient civilization they believed to be divine beings. Being fascinated with this civilization, they tried recreating past events using artificial retroact rain. When they failed, they tried creating a replica, and that resulted in Mech Abomination. After helping Alto with his investigation, he answers a number of questions for us. As to the question of why they were in Jinzhou, he responds that they sensed that the Threnodian was about to be resurrected and came to inform the magistrate. We ask him about our connection to Black Shores, to which he says he doesn't really know much about hidden secrets, as he's only a consultant. However, he reveals that this isn't our first time being reawakened. And last time we woke up at the Black Shores, which brings so many questions to mind. Like, how many times has the rover been reawakened? And what set of circumstances result in his dormant state? Does he forget his past every time? Or is this just the first time? Anyways, just as the mission was concluding, we rush outside to see real retroact rain occurring around us. We get an emergency call from Yang Yang letting us know that Jinzhou is under attack and that there's a TD outbreak. The reason all this is happening is because Frolog is controlling tacit discords and summoning the Threnodian of war. Here, our perspective is shifted to Jian. He's out on the front lines in Desert Rock Highlands. The retroact rain causes hallucinations, especially in areas where there's a lot of casualties. While the rain just causes hallucinations, as the casualties increase, the effects of those hallucinations and phantoms become real. Even though the antidote for the retroact rain's effects have been distributed, some soldiers still report sporadically seeing phantoms in the rain, and Jian is of no exception. He sees the previous general of the Midnight Rangers, General Geshu Lin. This hallucination is criticizing his leadership ability, harkening back to before Jian was a general and just a medic. That day, Jian advised General Geshu Lin to not go into battle because of the phantoms. So the Phantom Geshu Lin questioned what Jian would do if he was in his shoes that same day. Jian eventually finds his resolve and destroys the hallucination. Then, the Void Plentilune appears. It's the giant distorted moon in the sky. Once it completely takes shape, Overthrax, the Threnodian of war, will be reawakened. It consumes weapon frequencies to enhance itself. After countless battles, the Northfall Barrens has become a massive graveyard of weapons, which will make the Threnodian even stronger than before. Eventually, this moon harnesses enough power for the Overthrax statue to emerge from the sea, built from repurposed weapons and debris. It forms a barrier around itself to continue gathering energy, so we strategize how to attack it while it's still weak. Together with Jian, Mortefi, and Baiji, a strategy is devised to use a machine called the Disruptor to destroy the barrier. They enact the plan and a huge laser destroys the barrier. Once inside, Rover and Jian make their way to the Overthrax statue. The Threnodian reconstitutes the frequencies of the Crownless, but it's no match for Rover and Jian. The Threnodian absorbs the frequencies of the Crownless into itself to create another being. This being is the Dreamless. During an intense battle, Jian and Rover discover that the moon behind it is its core, and Dreamless is protecting it. The battle rages on, leading to Jian exhausting all his power and falling to his knees. Rover limit breaks and rushes Dreamless. Abby absorbs some of Dreamless frequencies, resulting in a new level of power and abilities. Havoc Rover. Eventually, Rover and Jian defeat the Dreamless. As Dreamless lay twisted and defeated, the moon retreats. Dreamless's body ignites and self-destructs in a powerful ball of energy. This energy is absorbed by none other than Abby, protecting everyone. The being that was theorized to be inside of us earlier by Baiji, the same being that has been with us since we first began our journey and fought the Crownless, and the being that potentially was placed inside of us by the unknown god. The rain subsides, tacit discords vanish. The battle is won. Act 7 of the story gives us a lot of background information on what characters were doing and just how things got to be the way they are. Basically, the story centers around the secret that Jinshi gave us earlier, and that is Sentinel Jue is missing. So, what happened to him? Well, at some point in time before the rover woke up, Scar and the Fractsidus captured Sentinel Jue, and they captured him for a few reasons. One reason is that they wanted to resurrect the Threnodian of war, and they didn't want Sentinel Jue disrupting their plans, which is why they wanted to recruit Rover as well, to keep him from getting in the way or possibly gain an ally to their plot. Another reason they captured Jue is they knew Jinshi would eventually seek out and potentially find Jue, At the end of Act 7, Jinshi resonates with Sentinel Jewess frequencies while overclocking, creating her second awakening. The Fractsidus is dedicated to creating their own resonators, and they're all about combining the powers and abilities of tacit discords and humans to create their own resonators. In the past, they had the Court of Savante research the second awakening, and at that time, it was just a theory. Understanding this process is super important for the Fractsidus to complete their artificial resonator processes and finally be able to create resonators to rival the Sentinels' power. And while this isn't super important for their plans overall right now, an additional reason why they captured Jue is likely because even though they learned a lot about Jue's powers from the Court of Savante, there's still more to gain if they can harness its abilities to manipulate time. So what is the story of Mount Firmament and Jue? Long ago, Mount Firmament was under attack, and the city was destroyed by tacit discords. To protect the people of Mount Firmament and make sure it never happens again, Sentinel Jue places a temporal barrier around Mount Firmament. This barrier causes time to flow very differently. A century might pass on the outside of the barrier, while only half a day might pass on Mount Firmament, making it nearly impossible for the average person to visit or come and go as they please. Once a person leaves Mount Firmament, their body would immediately experience the time difference, causing their body to rapidly age 100 years in a single instant. During that attack long ago, an infant was killed during the chaos of the town being destroyed. Sentinel Jue resurrected this child and raised her as its own until she was a teenager. Then she would be sent to City Hall to become Magistrate of Jingzhou. That child was Jinshi. Jinshi is Sentinel Jue's appointed resonator. Because of the current state of Jue, Jinshi finds her health and abilities diminishing. So, after the Thernoidian threat was defeated, Jinshi wastes no time heading to Mount Firmament to find out what happened to Jue. The Fractsidus revealed a prophecy from the Sentinel. However, Jinshi was not surprised to hear it, because Jue had already told her these things in the past. After the Battle of the Thernoidian, Rover heads to the Huashu Academy to receive a checkup, and Baiji is able to confirm her theories about the being inside of our body. She says that it shares frequencies similar to that of a tacit discord stored in a databank. In other words, it's our own personal echo that we absorbed at some point in time. It's determined that the rover's relationship with Abby is a convergent codependent relationship. So, as one gets stronger, so does the other. And if one is harmed, the other is too. Without us, it cannot manifest. All this brings into question, what really is Abby? Baiji goes on to say that in other countries, there are highly intelligent echoes that can act on their own. These types are highly involved in every aspect of human life there, and their abilities are beyond our imaginations. Yang Yang thinks about what Baiji said, saying that neither she nor Baiji, an expert in the field, has ever seen one of these types of echoes in person. But they believe it's possible that Abby could be such an echo. Rover goes on to meet his friends Yang Yang and Chisha at Panhua Restaurant, where he shows off his new companion that sleeps within his body, Abby. Well, it isn't actually named at this point. It wants a name, and it eventually decides on the name Abby. They ask it to demonstrate its power, but it clearly doesn't know how, which brings into question under what circumstances do Abby's abilities activate. Now that the crisis is over, Yang Yang says we should seek out Jinshi and Sentinel Jue for guidance, and just debrief after the experience. But after several days, Jinshi isn't back yet. As we spend the next few days waiting for Jinshi, Rover has a strange vision. When Abby and Rover discuss this vision, we learn that Rover recalls that there's a tacit discord outbreak on a mountain, shaped like a dragon. Jue saves the citizens by manipulating time, creating a time barrier around the mountain, which prevented TDs from entering. Of course, we know this mountain to be Mount Firmament, and these things actually happen. They briefly talk to two old men sitting nearby, and one speaks about a faraway land where there are other echoes, potentially like Abby. Of course, we now know this land is Renacita. The other old man explains that Mount Firmament is where the first people of Jinzhou came from, and that it looks like a giant statue of Sentinel Jue. Sanhua reveals to us that Magistrate Jin Shi has gone to Mount Firmament alone to investigate the Sentinel's disappearance, and she has not yet reported back. Sanhua wants Rover to help her find Jin Shi because she thinks she might be in danger. She warns us that Mount Firmament is already a dangerous place, and few people who've been there have managed to actually return. So she sets up a meeting with a wayfinder who can guide us safely through the dangerous terrain, barriers, and temporal anomalies surrounding the mountain. Rover and Abby prepare to head to the ferry terminal to find the wayfinder and uncover what's really going on. The wayfinder is Chang Li, a dear friend and mentor to Magistrate Jin Shi. She recognizes our resemblance to a person of legend who was unaffected by the time-altering effects of Mount Firmament. Chang Li suspects that the rover has a deep connection to the Sentinel and is potentially linked to the ancient prophecies. They set off together to rescue Jin Shi, who is believed to be trying to stabilize the region. Eventually, they reach Hongzhen, where it's overrun by Fractsidus artificers. Rover and Chang Li find a hidden city shelter where they meet Lady Xin Yi, a retired city official aiding evacuees. Xin Yi recounts Jin Shi's recent activities, including protecting locals and attempting to recover a cipher key to access the Sentinel's resting place, the Mianlong Chamber. Jin Shi, while injured, acknowledges the prophecy about her eventual clash with the Sentinel and her potential to surpass it in power, aka the Second Awakening. Because even though Scar whispered some of this to her, the Sentinel had already told her this long ago, that they would have to fight and there would come a day where she would surpass it in power, a day when the humans of Jinzhou would take control of their own destiny. Xin Yi, Chang Li, and Rover plan their next steps. Chang Li and Rover will divert enemy forces at Truth Seeker's Pass, while Xin Yi prepares an ambush to protect the chamber. As we come to Truth Seeker's Pass, we learn a lot more information about Sentinel Jue. We learn that Jue had already sustained heavy injuries by the time he came to Mount Firmament. It no longer had the ability to restore time. Instead, it could only stop or rewind it. This further explains why the time in Mount Firmament is so strange. Chang Li notes that Jue's injuries will keep getting worse, and if Jue dies, the temporal disruptions will spiral out of control, engulfing all of Jinzhou. The Court of Savante originally created Chronosorters to harness Jue's powers for the Second Awakening, but every attempt failed. They weren't a complete failure, as the devices still controlled time locally, but to achieve what they wanted, they needed more. The Second Resonance Awakening hypothesis proposed a solution. They postulated that the collision between two resonating frequencies might cause a second awakening in a resonator, giving them total control to manipulate time. Rover recalls the prophecy talked about earlier, and Chang Li agrees that fight has to happen to trigger the Second Awakening for Jin Shi, so she may exert even stronger resonance abilities, one that allows her to restore the flow of time. They eventually find Jin Shi, release Jue. Rover transfers the temporal mandate to Jin Shi, and she fights Jue, unleashing her Second Awakening. The flow of time around Mount Firmament is restored, and Jinzhou is saved. After the ordeal, Rover is allowed to ask Jue a series of questions. Through them, we get a glimpse into Rover's past. We learn that Jue calls Rover Lord Arbiter, as Rover is Jue's former master. We ask Jue why we lost our memories, and Jue straight up tells us that he doesn't know. All of its knowledge comes from us. And then Jue says this:
"You said you planned to participate in history, to make choices, and witness the development of civilizations. One had previously requested for permission to transfer the temporal mandate to Jin Shi, as that is how one is designed to function. Every ounce of my existence, from life to death, and even the passing on of power, is subject to your approval."
And finally, Jue leaves us with these words:
"The Black Shores is the starting point of your journey in this world. If you have doubts, this one suggests a visit to that land. The Wuthering Waves ebb and flow. They shall send you back to where you belong."
We've already covered most of the Black Shore's plot during the prologue, but I'll try to quickly connect the dots and summarize the basis of what happens for this part of the story. Due to the errors in Tethys' core and the constant reanimation of simulated souls of the port of Guizhou, they start becoming sentient. One former Black Shore's member who died in the incident is one of those simulations. She's aware of the suffering and knows Tethys needs a new core. She hatches a plot to bring Rover back to Black Shores and potentially assimilate him into Tethys' core. Rover and Shorekeeper explore the lament inside of Tethys, and it snatches her up to use her its core. Though not human, Rover views Shorekeeper as more than just an artificial being. He sees her humanity. We find out she was created to be Tethys' core, and we also find out that Rover, even in the past, didn't want to sacrifice her, which is why he left Black Shores in the first place. He wanted to find another way. Finally, Shorekeeper substitutes a more calm and stable frequency for Tethys' core, and the day is saved. Sidebar: that last part of the quest is somewhat frustrating because of the plot hole of why she no longer needed to be the core and why she just didn't do that before. Anyways, that is the current story of Wuthering Waves so far. I'm really excited to see what the 2.x series has in store for us. Also, big shout out to Narushio. He played a big role in me having the footage I needed for this video. I didn't have any footage for 1.1 or 1.0, and your guy hooked me up. So if you guys haven't subscribed to him yet, give him a follow. Thanks again, Narushio. That is all I have for you today. For those of you who stuck around to the end, hey man, I really appreciate you. This is by far my longest video, and my first time doing something like this. Please be sure to share this video to other people you think might like it, and if you're interested in discussing lore, builds, or just the game in general, consider joining my Discord. And until next time, I'll catch you in the waves. Peace.